Hi, call me Louis. This is my spot, LuiSpot.
Africa remains the only continent which is described as Anglophone. So in Kenya or Uganda, where possibly only 20% speak the English language, we are Anglophone. In French, former French colonies, they are Francophone. In former Portuguese colonies, they are Lusophone. In some Arab countries, they are Arabophone. That is who we are. So, when the OAU met in 2013, they asked the question, what happened to the Pan-African spirit? And when, therefore, they met in Sirte, in Libya, under the tutelage at that time of Muammar al-Gaddafi, it was resolved in 1999 that the OAU be renamed and be referred to as the African Union, and it was launched, as you know, in Durban, South Africa in the year 2000. But one of the most important things in the 2013 was the speech of the then chairman of the OAU Council, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, here in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. And I want you to read that letter, which I'll paraphrase, in which she writes an imaginary letter to Kwame Nkrumah. He tells and apologizes to Kwame, telling Kwame, we apologize to you because we did not listen to you. We are weak because we did not listen to you. We are divided into 54, 55, depending on whether the Moroccans agree that Sahrawi is a country. Nobody cares about us. And brothers and sisters, if you want to know how weak we are, and we are weak, look at how we are treated. Last month, the world met in New York. The General Assembly. When African heads of states and government are speaking, the hall is empty. Nobody bothers because they are saying nothing. And even if they are saying something, it is something that can be ignored. Compare when an African head of state and government is speaking and when the Prime Minister of Little Israel is speaking. They will listen because we are weak and disunited. So we have a weak continent because the spirit of Pan-Africanism disappeared. So the question that we can ask, what is the state of Pan-Africanism as we speak today? The African Union, which is weak, says the right things and does the wrong things 9 out of 10 times. And what are the critical areas in which we are weak? We are weak politically because nobody listens to us. On the 3rd day of March, 1900, on the 6th day of March, 1997, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage of Tanzania, speaking in Accra, Ghana, on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of the independence of Ghana, said, the speech is entitled, "We Unite or We Perish." And Mwalimu says, "I want to apologize to Kwame Nkrumah. Those of us who believed in gradualism were wrong. Nkrumah was right. But Nkrumah also did not appreciate the level of suspicion that existed amongst the leaders at that time. Our generation," he says, "fought for the liberation of Africa. It is the duty of the new generation to carry the torch forward," he says in his plea. He says that "I do not believe that the tribe can be the basis of mobilization in Africa." And he said that as I travel along across the world, people do not care about our Tanzanianness or our Ghanaianness or our Kenyanness or our Ethiopianness. In their eyes, we are all Africans. And perhaps that is what we should use as the building block in order to talk about African unity. But we are not being naive about that unity. Because sometimes when we talk about Pan-Africanism and about African unity, people think we are being too simplistic about it. No, it is not being simplistic and being naive. It is recognizing that as long as we remain the way we are, then Africa in the next 25 years will be recolonized. You know, what is the state of Africa as I speak now? What is the state of your continent as we speak now? Because of our disunity. Because when we are disunited, then it is good for Europe and America. And China progressively. Look at the state of your continent as I speak. 33 currencies in Africa. 33 currencies. None of which is used to conclude transactions anywhere. I come to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and I show my shilling. They say, "What is this?" But let me show the dollar. Oh, this is it. Let me show the euro. This is it. 80% of transactions in Africa are concluded outside of the continent in dollars. So you may have the central bank or the Federal Bank of Ethiopia, or Mickey Mouse. You may have the Central Bank of Kenya, Mickey Mouse. You may have all these 54 central banks useless. Because we are not playing in the real league, we are playing in the small league. That is why when the Chinese president summons all our presidents, and they summon them, the letters may be polite, but it's summons. They go to Beijing, tails between their legs, and they are told. Then the Chinese president gives Africa $60 billion. $60 billion. What is $60 billion? George Bezos has more than that given to a whole continent. That is the state of the continent. I watched a woman from Nigeria who had been rescued from the Mediterranean around Lampedusa saying, "I will not go back to Africa. Even if I die in the Mediterranean, I'll try again and again." What is it that can make a human being say that I do not want to go back to my home. Because the natural instinct of a human being should be that you want to go home. It's because we are weak. Pan-Africanism, the new Pan-Africanism must have an economic component of it. That is how I understand Africa Agenda 2063. Africa Agenda 2063 says that by the year 2063, Africa will have pulled up her people into a middle-level economy on 7 pillars, economically, politically, and otherwise. And the Africa Continental Free Trade Area suggests to me that we'll have broken all the tariff and non-tariff barriers. Will we be able to achieve those in the spirit of new Pan-Africanism? Will we have one currency? Will we have one passport? We have already said so under the Kigali Agreement that we are going to have one passport. Will we have one telephone code? We have 55 telephone codes. You move from Nairobi 254, you come here, you have another one, you go to Eritrea, you have another one. There is no connectivity in the 21st century. How can you be taken seriously? Those of you in the United States of America, you fly from Boston, Massachusetts to San Francisco in the West, 6 hours, 40 minutes, the code is 1. The tariff is 1. The COVID test is 1. I moved from Nairobi to Addis Ababa, COVID test. If I don't travel this evening, I'll be subjected to another COVID test. I go to Tanzania, COVID test. Uganda, COVID test. Your nose will begin debating with you. In the United States of America, you take one COVID test from Miami and you don't take it as you go to St. Louis in Missouri. I'm talking about very practical things. I come here and I have to go through an immigration. My passport has to be stamped. Somebody in the United States of America does not have to do that. Somebody in the European Union across 27 countries does not have to do that. In China, which is, of course, 1.4 billion, does not have to do that. Until we change all those things, we are going nowhere, so that we have only one telephone code, so that we have only one currency, so that we have only a single immigration, so that we eliminate all these armies. Am I being naive or simplistic? Yes, we can create a single Africa with a loose government, a confederal government, dealing only with foreign affairs and defense and monetary policy and general policy formulation, with different governance systems. That is the only way in which these narrow tribal instincts will be dampened. But as long as, and now I want to conclude, if we only see Pan-Africanism as sentimentalism, as a romantic idea about which we debate, and we remain as we are, then this is the Africa that I see. This is the Africa that I see in 25 years' time. Many Africans, either legally or otherwise, will break into different autonomous countries. Many of them. We'll have more than 100 countries in Africa, each claiming self-determination, and is already beginning to happen. Because we will be looking at narrow ethnic agenda as the only way of defining our affairs. Ethiopia will break down, Kenya will break down, Nigeria will break down, South Africa will break down. And look at South Africa. Only last week, the whites in Western Cape in South Africa have delivered a petition to the government in Pretoria saying they want to create their own country. The Democratic Republic of Congo will break down, Libya will break down. The only way in which we can immunize ourselves against all those things is to create a Pan-African nation which allows for self-determination within the nation. And we must redefine terms such as self-determination. Self-determination must mean the ability of a people within a bigger unit to enjoy their culture, to enjoy their tradition, to speak their language. They do it on a smaller scale in Switzerland, those of you who are familiar with Switzerland. And we de-emphasize the presidency, we de-emphasize the prime minister's office. Pixley Kaisa Kaseme said, and I conclude with him, Africa is diverse. Some people say that because of our diversity, she cannot unite. She can. Because unity in diversity is possible if we understand what human beings need. In the nature of things, human beings need security. In the nature of things, human beings need food. Human beings need medical services. They need infrastructure. If you have a government that allows that, he said, then it reminds me of the piano. If you press the black button of the piano, it produces some sound. If you press the white one, it produces some sound. But if you press both the black and the white, it produces melodious music. And I think that the new Pan-Africanism must look to that. And you who have the honor and privilege of thinking and working in government, it is your duty to start that journey. It is not going to be easy, but it is an intergenerational journey. Play your part, for it can be done.